Hello, everyone. My name's John Best, and welcome to, believe it or not, our 23rd town hall. And today we have the honor of having Dr. Harry Kloor with us. So Dr. Kloor, that's his Fabio pose right there, which I really like. I have to, that one I keep, I don't normally like to use that picture, Melissa, because you know how it makes me feel. But Harry's with us today. Harry is literally an expert in a lot of things. For those of you who may have been a couple of years ago at our AXFI, Harry discussed avatars and he discussed a lot of things that have become far more important. He also does a lot of work in the medical industry, has been working with different folks, including Peter Diamandis and his group on vaccines. So there's a lot happening that Harry has a lot of privy to, and I asked him if he'd be willing to join us, and he agreed. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that are out there in terms of what's being, measures that are being taken to clean things up and where we're going. But before we get there, we got to go through the rules of the road because that's what we do. So the format is a short briefing from me, which I'm doing right now. If you want to talk, if you have something you want to bring up, we'd love to have you. I see lots of great guests here. Because of Zoom bombing, we're going to want you to go ahead, and you can start doing this now. Go into the chat and check in. Let us know that you are you so that we don't delete you. And we will make sure that that works out. If you feel compelled to dig deeper, so let's say that someone pops up, Gary Coates and Andrew Bertrand, any number of people who are on here, Kevin Wright, all these great people who have a lot to add to these sorts of things, and you want to talk to them more, we encourage you to use the chat and do a private chat connection, and that way you can either schedule a separate call or do a lot of different things. We have a fly problem here in Rapid City, and occasionally it lands on my camera, which is very exciting. If there's a sense that something needs a longer discussion, or for instance, you wanted to talk with Harry separately, I know he'd be happy to speak with you, and there's maybe something you want to take offline, just let us know. Remember that these are being recorded. This means you, Harry, that please don't say anything that you don't want published out in the world. And if you do say something, but you want to share it with them and you still would like it removed, because we want the candor, we want you to talk, we want you to feel comfortable talking about these things. Please go ahead and just let us know, and we'll make sure that Melissa edits it out before it hits the airwaves there or it hits the interwebs. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and lead in on this a little bit. Oh, by the way, here's where chat is. Like I said, when we first started this, nobody knew what Zoom was. Now everybody knows. I don't think I had to go over this, but I see tons of people have logged in chat, so very exciting there. Let's move forward to the next one here. So Harry's company, which I've actually been working very closely with him on, is called Beyond Imagination. And for those of you that weren't there, Harry talked a little bit about his dream in AXFI. But before we go into that, before we really dig into Harry's dream and how now it's become kind of an important aspect of what's going on with COVID for a lot of companies, I just wanted to check in and see, I'm going to check in with a couple of folks and just get a pulse for what's going on. So I'll start off with Gary, just because I know Gary will talk and he'll probably turn on his screen for me. Gary, how are things going out in Portland? I hear lots of interesting things about Portland, but I don't really know exactly what's happening. I know you guys are right downtown, but how are things going there?
Yeah, our office is just a few blocks away from all of the mayhem, the nightly mayhem that's been going on. It's not good. It's not good, and it needs to stop. So I don't know when it will stop, but it's a lot of destruction. It's horrible.
Sorry to hear that. How is, from the Crayon standpoint, that's not an issue in the sense your building is like if I remember right, it's like a fortress. I remember trying to get into
a little bit. There was somebody that got into one of the secure floor, not past the security, but was on the secure floor actually yesterday, and it had to be taken care of. So we're talking about other security measures because that happened. So that's not good. It's just probably based on the proximity. We're We're across the street from City Hall. So we're right in the heart of downtown, right in the middle of all of it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we've had no windows broken and we've only had one incident of graffiti. But other businesses around
And
us
that
have
one just
been
said Gary Coates sucks, which was weird. That
pretty
it,
much.
yeah, it's weird
Yeah.
that they do
And I
you
went
like.
down there and had to scrub it off myself.
Yeah, yeah. But that's not related to the others. That's normal. I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
exactly.
For those of you that don't know, Gary and I are long time friends. Gary was one of the original founders of Carillion. So if you're out there using any of the Pfizer phone banking products, you got Gary to thank for it. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But he's been a long time out of it, so you can't blame him for it. Harry, I think you're from Portland as well, correct?
No, I was born in San Francisco, lived a lot between Southern Oregon and Northern California. Spent a little time up in Portland and Seattle.
Yeah, I knew you had some connections out that way. Well, Gary, thanks for sharing. Anything going on otherwise that you think should be shared? Are you guys still trucking along on the opening and whatnot?
Yeah. All of our branches are back open and we're taking appointments. Members can walk in and go to a teller if they need to get cash. All of our drive-ups have been open the whole time. So I want us to get back to normal. I'd like to get back to normal. It'd be nice.
Yeah. No, I definitely get it. Well, thanks
Hopefully,
for sharing.
Hopefully, I think what we're going to talk about in part is so that everyone can get back to normal a little bit.
Yeah, that's definitely the purpose of today's discussion with Harry.
And I was at the AXFI for your presentation, and it was very interesting. I'm curious to hear what you have to say today.
Yeah, he's definitely progressed, or we've progressed, so it's exciting stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining, and your backyard as always looks beautiful. So
Yep.
I'm not sure where that little door goes, but I won't ask.
Out of my big deck.
Yeah, you've got your deck covered. Yep, I'm gonna leave it at that. All right. Well, moving on. Let's check in with Kevin Wright, just because Kevin, I don't know if you're able to talk today, but I know you're down in the Orlando area. I'm sure people would like to hear about kind of how things are playing out for you. Let's see if he can talk. Sometimes he can, sometimes he can't. So he'll throw a chat in if he can't. Oh, only online today. Darn. Kevin always has real interesting things to say. All right. Well, then let's flip over and check in. Let's see. Let's check in with Andrew. And Andrew is usually in the Seattle Seahawks stadium.
Yep. How's it going?
There he is.
Yeah.
Good, man. Good. Those people never look behind you.
Go Pack, go! Go
Yeah.
Pack, go!
Oh, the wrong one for Harry here. Yeah.
How's it going for you guys?
Pretty, we just the same thing as with Gary. We've been open. We don't have, luckily, since we're a small town, we don't have all the craziness that's been going on, like they've been having in Portland and everything. But we've been open with the online appointment scheduler that we just implemented, and also we're scanning IDs when they walk in the door so we get that whole tracking of the membership when they come in. Other than that, I'm just ready for my virtual vacation with my AI robot there, Harry. So.
Oh yeah. Well, you'll be able to jump into the avatar, go anywhere you want. We'll talk about that.
Little telepresence. Yeah.
Little telepresence. Exactly.
Well,
Well,
we should just fill the stadium with avatars, and then everyone can get back to watching football.
Yeah, it's true. Be a heck of a lot easier and less sunburn, that's for sure.
Well, right now the season tickets, they're closing the first 6 rows of the stadium. So if you have season tickets there, they're just giving you your money back, or you can get somewhere else. But I wouldn't want to go anywhere else.
Well, you can always
space for avatars.
Yeah,
yeah, but,
exactly.
but it's the Seahawks, right? So they just give those away, I think.
That's true.
All
Unless
right,
the Packers are there. So.
Yeah, unless a good team's in town. Eric, I haven't seen Eric in a long time. Eric, thanks for joining us. Eric, would you mind chatting just for a minute and tell us what's going on out in St. Louis, or pardon me, Springfield? Let's see if he'll unmute for us. Eric, you there? It doesn't look like he will. All right. Well, I'll check in with our sponsors here. We want to thank Ox for sponsoring us, formerly the Canadian Service Network. Hey, Doug, how are you doing today?
Hey, we're doing great today, John.
Good. I know you had some family members that had been stricken with COVID. Everybody healthy?
Yeah, everybody's doing good now, so thanks for asking.
I'm glad. Anything to share from the Ox side of things that you guys are seeing specifically related to the Crane Shared Network or anything like that?
No, everything appreciate just a reminder, who we were and who we are now, but a lot of our time's just been spent, making that transition and getting ready to move forward from there. And so thanks.
Awesome. All right, well, then let's get started. So what we're going to do today is Harry and I are going to have a chat. I encourage you guys to jump in. Oh, and I forgot Ben's here too. So let me just check in with Ben real fast because he's over that way. Hey, Ben, how's it going? And we talked last time about QCash and the ability to do the short-term, smaller loans. Are you seeing more of that pickup? Maybe just give us a quick update.
Yeah, I can. Absolutely not. We're continuing to see declines as, again, economies begin to shut down. People don't have money to spend, so highest savings rates that we've seen in a long time. So not much need for short-term credit to bridge the gap these days.
Interesting. Yeah, but we're still kind of predicting that to come back around, particularly in areas like Texas, or Florida. The areas that are being hit. You think?
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as end of July, the excess unemployment insurance benefit ends, and it starts to tumble from there because states range from unemployment insurance from 13 weeks to 26 weeks, and then the CARES Act added, I think, another 13 weeks. So, it's all by September through December. It's going to be a reconciliation that occurs for members and credit unions and how we help them.
I would agree. Well, thanks for sharing. And for those of you that are interested, QCash is out there. Certainly a great solution if you're looking to help your membership with short-term loans. All right, so Harry, I want to start off here. So you've got 2 doctorates. You've got a doctorate in physics, and the other one, I believe, was in children's toys. That's the second one.
Underwater basket weaving.
Underwater basket weaving. I think one of them was a mail-in doctorate, a PhD, and the other was from some other important school that not only did you get 2 doctorates, but you managed to do it faster than anyone else. So you've done a lot recently. You've been talking to me a lot about kind of what's going on in the vaccine world. Maybe give us just a little bit of what you're seeing out there before we start into sort of the avatar thing, because I know you've been up on that.
So more importantly, in fact, I'm an author with about 20 other PhDs and MDs on one of the most comprehensive COVID write-ups, both for diagnosing, treating, prevention. That's coming out in the peer review magazine, Alzheimer magazine. And the reasons for Alzheimer's is in part elderly, especially those who are 85 and above, are the ones who are mostly dying. And a large number of those are Alzheimer's, but because there's no page limit is why we chose to publish there, so that the medical community and the public can have access to a consolidated review of everything in terms of testing methods, vaccines, drugs, treatments, symptoms, basically the whole thing. And now, because of that, I've been diving into this actually since very early February, pretty well versed on what's out there. For instance, I actually just came from a meeting on infrared detection technology, which is a good companion for what we're about to talk about. And there's only so much you can do with washing your hands and wearing a mask. And in fact, actually, a lot of the research now is beginning to indicate that it's actually touching surfaces and then touching your face that are more likely to get you infected than some aerosol. In fact, many tests have shown that even after 30 minutes of trying to gather aerosol from patients who are not coughing or sneezing, but have a high fever and everything else, you don't actually collect anything. So while maybe good to have a mask in a closed environment, just in case, you really need to be able to stop the spread. I think you're going to have to start disinfecting surfaces.
So this publication that you talked about, when that comes out, I'll go ahead and push that a bit. We'll definitely get it out to this group. It'll be something obviously they have to pay for, or it's probably behind a paywall. But
I think it's free, but if not, I mean, I'm sure I'll get a free copy and you can distribute it.
Well,
This
thank
was
you.
all done. This was done to try to help the world and gather the information from an unbiased group. There's
Yeah.
the people in this are of every race, creed, color, political persuasion, and across the planet.
Nice. Well, and I knew you were there, so I wanted to definitely bring that up and talk a bit about what you've seen out there, and like you said, the issue that we've been running into, and what we're starting to see, and this is what you and I've been discussing recently, is that a lot of organizations are moving towards the disinfectant of the whole building using ultraviolet lighting. And as you and I have been researching this, a lot of robotics involved, similar to the Avatar program that you were talking about. You want to talk a little bit about what you just mentioned it a minute ago, but a little bit about that. While you do that, I'll try to bring up the MIT video that we looked at the other day that was kind of going over a little of that as well.
So specifically on UV, or do you want me to talk in general on avatars?
Let's talk specifically about UV, and then we'll get to the Avatar side of things, if that works.
So, and the reason I say that is because, as you know, there are core technologies developed for the robotic avatars, from vision systems to collision systems to mapping and detection, that we then employ in the UV. So UV is being deployed in various places, both hotels and hospitals and other locations, factories, manufacturing, both from ceiling lamps and in some cases in robotic units. These range from very sophisticated to fairly simple. A key component of a UV system for most of them is simply a mobility base that can move around either completely by AI or by human assistance, and a lighting unit that is powered from this base and can go back and plug in for recharging. So in essence, what you're talking about is a system that moves about like this one you're seeing an example of, so that you can recharge like it's doing here. You can monitor it and move it around. If it runs into something, a human can jump in, or he can navigate around it, and then you'll know that area was not disinfected. So key elements of a system is it mobile? How smart is it? Can a human pop into it to assist it? And in terms of mapping, how well it's being mapped, so that you can always check and have a reliability. This is good not only to get things clean, but in a business, say like whether it's a hospital or a hotel or a credit union, you want to be able to say, no, we actually took all these steps, and here we can prove that we disinfected, every night or every morning, so that there's liability protection. Because I think this is about reducing fear, reducing infections, but also reducing risk.
Yeah, I completely agree. And in looking at this, one thing that a lot of folks don't realize is that there are a lot of surfaces involved in banking and working with the public in that regard. You sit down at the table, you're at the teller line, you've got money kind of going back and forth. I mean, literally, you could have a UVC in the vault that would be, sanitizing in the money that comes in and out. There's a huge coin shortage at the moment, which is making, interesting things right now. So I just, as we look at this technology, and one of the most interesting things you said is somebody jumping into it. So expand on that a little bit. So the idea is that I've got this robot. Let's say that there's a robot in my branch, and its job is when nobody's there, because the UVC rays are not necessarily good for humans, right?
Right. So first of all, you can't really operate UV with humans present. If you can, then throw that lamp away,
Right.
because it
Not
is
working.
of no use. And the intensity needed to kill the virus is definitely going to damage you. So in terms of like how you proceed with one of these is if you put a robot either behind the glass or in front of the glass, because I think you need to do both because you have workers back there. You need to map out its pathways initially, and that's best done by a human operator so that you can not have it random. Now, we have techniques to build in computing to show the best path for that robot to take. And once you know what a room's layout, you can do a minimum path with the proper exposure time, because that's the other thing. If you just have them in the ceiling and they're coming down, you may miss a lot of places. If you have them in a robot, you got to make sure that it stays in an area long enough, and that will depend upon the intensity of the light and in part the surface. Once you know those factors, you can control it, map it around, and then it'll clean it up. But say one day someone moves a desk or puts something in the way, your collision avoidance system, for instance, the systems that we have, will avoid colliding into that, but will also notify someone either in the log, or if you have a live observer who could monitor literally thousands of these and create a new path around it, or be able to send a message that somebody needs to move that the next day, or that this area was now sanitized for XYZ reason.
So with that in mind, let me, so this thing can't be like a Roomba. You can't find this thing like, bumping in over and over again into the desk in the middle of the place that wasn't there before, because that'll be a huge problem.
Well, for a couple reasons. One, it's okay if a Roomba doesn't pick up some dirt on the floor. It's not okay if your robot doesn't sanitize an area. Second of all, you don't want it doing a random path, because just running these batteries takes a lot of energy, and running from batteries, the lights takes a lot of energy. So what you want is a idealized path, a most optimum path to reduce the amount of time this thing is operating, and to have a fast turnaround. What if you were using it for instance, they use these in operating rooms, and they also use them in patient rooms. And it takes like an hour if you hand clean a room, and you can do it in 10 to 15 minutes with a robot. And so if you're cleaning between units, now you're not going to do that in a credit union, but there's many other circumstances where you want fast turnaround. No matter what, you don't want a random path, because it's just going to use up your energy, and this thing may not be able to complete cleaning an area. You may have to go back and recharge if you just had it randomly bumping around.
Yeah. And so just a quick question, maybe Gary, are you having to pay extra to have some, I know this fly is driving me crazy. Are you having to pay extra these days to have someone come in and do extra special cleaning in the branches?
I think so. There's a cleaning crew. I've been working from home and haven't been going to the office very often. And I went into the office, and I had left some papers out on my desk, and they were crinkled up, and because they looked like they'd been completely soaked with water. Well, nightly.
So they're driving around Lysol and everything?
Correct. Crews are coming in, I'm assuming with some kind of a backpack sprayer or something, and they're spraying every surface in every office. And I believe it's happening nightly.
And that's got to be expensive.
Not only expensive, but you don't have any proof that everything that you wanted sprayed, it was sprayed.
Well, I was just about to say, we had, I'm not going to say which government. My wife does government placements for high security areas and whatnot. And this one group they did this thing where they did a gold team and a blue team. And so they work in different halves of the building, and then 1 week in, 1 week off, and they go in and clean. They put security cameras up and discovered the group that, because they had a COVID outbreak, discovered the group they hired to come in and clean. They started off by trying, but they gave up pretty quickly on the protocol. And so, that was a huge problem, whereas this for sure would bring that together. And what I was finding when I was looking at some of the research, and Harry, you did some extensive research, I know, is that very quickly a whole lot of like movie theaters and other places that weren't ever doing this before are now doing this.
Yes. So
Like
of course, most places weren't doing this, right? Whether it was
Yeah,
your
even
hotel
hospital.
room or a hospital or anything else. Actually, hospitals is probably the best place to catch an infection. So maybe one of the good things to come out of this is better disinfecting procedures. But the use for UV robots is, according to the research that we've done, is going to grow to about a $6 billion market. And that means it's not just for now during COVID, it's just going to be commonplace that we're going to be doing detection, whether it's infrared or other methods for not only this, but other viruses. And we will be doing disinfecting, whether it's from UV light or sprayers. And by the way, a robot can be equipped with both.
So one question I have is, so a lot of us have teller lines and whatnot that are kind of hoteling, meaning that, you run back and forth between two different keyboards, two different mice, you're kind of bouncing around. Does the UV light get to all that if it's high enough? Like, does it get the crevices of the mouse?
So UV light will get into all the crevices, anything that's exposed by the light. So quite easily, if you can put a flashlight on it, if any amount of light. By the way, UV light will bounce in the same way that any light will bounce. There's depending upon the surface material, the light can literally. So, for instance, if I want to disinfect my computer behind me, I don't necessarily have to shine the light behind it. If I hit a surface, it can reflect onto it.
As long as it stays there long enough, right?
Yeah. So that's one of the key things. You can't just people who go, oh, I'm just going to rub a wand over something. No, that's not going to work. It needs the appropriate amount of time, and that time depends upon the intensity of the light, the amplitude of the wave.
I had this idea. One of the problems we have is ATMs. It's a multi-use surface. Good news is it's outside, but I wonder, it would be cool if there was like a little door that would slide down between uses and just UV light that whole area where you put the card in and the buttons, and then slide back up when it was done. Because, those diodes are not that big, to get that little bit of a space. That would be interesting. Here's one right here.
As a first step, you can, of course, insert these so that you, for instance, you and I have had discussions about creating UV ATMs, which would not be difficult to do, so that the money was UV'd, so that then the money that came out, which is probably one of the most disgusting things you get your hands on, could be disinfected.
Hey, check it out. One of the Albert just shared exactly that thing. I love when we do this and we get to see. Check it out, Harry. So you can see there's the little guy, I guess, that goes up and down it. Are you able to see that?
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now the question is how long is it exposing for? So, because as you know, the intensity of those little diodes that they're showing right there, I would probably guess that if I actually did a test, it might not be doing anything, but depends. It has to have a certain level of exposure and time.
So Albert, would you be willing to, Albert, you're with One ATM, so you guys are talking about installing this on your ATMs?
Yeah, hey, what's going on, John? Yeah, absolutely. So it is something that we're working with Gen Mega directly with. They were one of the first ATM companies to start introducing this, which, to be honest, we were looking at it, but we hadn't seen an ATM company that said, hey, this is the steps that we're taking to try to, ensure that we've got some type of safety protocols or measures in place. So yeah, we've actually got Gen Mega that is going to be sending us one of their prototypes so we can start installing it and using it on our ATMs just to see how good they work. We do have a couple questions as well, to go on with what he had mentioned. As far as the length, a couple questions we have, John, is how long does it take to go down? Because if we've got a line of people that are trying to use the ATM, how long is it taking? People are getting impatient and not going to want to use it. How quick does it go? What if a little kid puts their finger? Does it get stuck? So there are still some questions that we have. So we're still looking into that.
I would check to, I would check to make sure, one, what the intensity of the UV light is and how long an area is being exposed. And then you could check that against very simple metrics that have been done online in terms of actual laboratory research and determine. because John can tell you that we've tested a variety of things, and a lot of times they're not even emitting UV light.
No.
Right.
Yeah, there's some. So you want to go on eBay and get a meter. BlackRock makes a meter, but it needs to have been at least calibrated within this century. But yeah, Harry's exactly right. There's a lot. There's a lot to that, but it's still a step in the right direction, given that this is our future. So
Absolutely.
I find it fascinating. So Harry, is that bumped up that use case within your organization? Like, are you guys looking at, or are we looking at
The use case of this is advancing in terms of UV tech. Definitely, look, we're going to see these robots everywhere. And for us, we realize that we have a lot of advantages in this area, because in fact, it's kind of like you're building a rocket ship, and now you decide, no, I just need a sounding rocket that goes up 100 meters. It's quite easy to scale down and simplify tech. So for us, from both our vision system, our tracking systems, our AI, our anti-collision, our mapping, all automatically fit into this area. So this is an area that we will be producing the highest level product, and in a variety of versions too. So depending upon whether or not you're in a stadium, there's one type of system. If you're in a credit union or a hotel room, a different type of system.
Yeah, and there's also other use cases. And one of the things you and I have talked frequently about is a lot of credit unions now are having to put security at the front door to limit the number of people that come in, as well as they would have normally had security there. Well, let's take some questions. So, again, sometimes I would say when you talked about this technology, the XFI, we all saw it and we said, yeah, we could see this. This makes some sense. Little did we know that the world would change so drastically, just 2 or 3 years later, or even 2 years later. And here we would be where this technology has a lot more use case. And so just, I wanted to hear from the group. Ben, I know you're into this kind of thing. Is this something that Washington State would look at?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything's on the table right now as we try to react. And the issue that I thought was interesting was brought up is the liability part of that. Is from a business perspective, it's like, how much do you have to do? And without any guidance, we're kind of all frozen as to what do we do, what's appropriate, and how do you encourage employees to be comfortable that what you're doing is absolutely working. And so I like the opportunity to integrate the robotic technology into kind of how do you operate a building and keep it safe.
Yeah, and in addition, so I will note, I actually been working on this since I was a kid in terms of wanting to bring avatars to fruition, and envisioning that it would allow you to go anywhere and do anything. And whether that's bringing you a service or going somewhere. But for instance, had our systems been in place in hospitals and in elderly facilities, we would have saved tens of thousands of lives, because those infections usually occurred when you had somebody come in or you had a patient go out and go back. With these systems, you could have just said, okay, I can bring the doctor, the nurse, the nutritionist into the location without actually physically going there, thus preventing risk. In addition, family members who have been cut off for a long time during these periods. My mom was in the hospital actually for a week. We couldn't see her. She actually died and was brought back. We still couldn't see her. If I had a robot, I could check in on her level of care and what was going on. That same avatar would allow various doctors. So I had one of my partners, Dr. Kateb, call in, but it was a 2-hour fiasco versus if he was there in 5 minutes, he would have been able to diagnose and figure out what was going on and correlate with the doctor.
Well, interestingly enough, too, you mentioned earlier the stats on the type of people, unfortunately, that are passing on, which is our elderly, our seniors, and the credit union, by and large, we have a lot of seniors as our customers or our members. One of the things that's been challenging is the transition of that money. One of the things you and I were talking about is a lot of times the seniors struggle with the tech in order to do this, but if they had a reason, remember, the robot that we're talking about won't look like what you saw in the picture because that might scare. Harry's got a much nicer, more friendly shell that goes over it, but someone for the gradient could theoretically jump into one of those, sit down with somebody, and really go over their options and try to make them feel more comfortable, particularly in the transition of all this funds, because we're seeing a heck of amount of money transitioning that we didn't expect to transition so quickly because of the number of deaths in the elderly space.
Yeah, so keeping both parties safe, also being able to move parties around. At my bank, my banking officer is there once a week now because he's rotated through 4 other banks because so many people aren't coming into work. With an avatar, of course, he can have an appointment with me at 10. He could be on the other side of LA at 10:30, et cetera, et cetera.
Harry, I think Gary had a question. Gary, you want to pop up? And I don't think this is related to the current test, but maybe, I don't know. Go ahead, Gary.
I didn't know if it was if it'd be possible currently or if it'd be something potentially in the future, but I was wondering if the robot could administer the COVID-19 test to avoid exposure to people.
So there's a variety of different types of tests, whether it was a nose swab, a throat swab, or actually a blood prick. Certainly you could have them do that, especially because you would make a specialized sort of like, you would want to tune down so it has very fine control. Remember, actually a human only has so much dexterity, right? So if I move my hand this much, that's how much my hand moves. But I could set the robot so that. So yeah, a robot could do medical tests. In fact, a robot could do much better medical tests because it could test your temperature. Are you still getting me, John?
You were gone for a second, but you're back.
All right. Yeah. Sometimes the internet here does that. I think it's the Chinese. So you could have a robot not only do the test but also scan for your temperature. Could also do a smell test because there's work being done on testing people with via sensors that detect stuff in the air. And also, for tracking, depending upon the customer, you could take a photo of the person and track them so that if they were infected, you would then have a database of the person. Now, myself personally, I don't want my photo or even information taken unless I've given my permission.
Yeah, that's another thing is you could get explicit consent as well that could be recorded. Great question. Yeah. Paul says it was uncomfortable enough to have a nasal swab done by a person. He doesn't want a robot to do it. And to your point, you would have to have that fine dexterity.
A robot could do it way better than a human. See, a robot can be set so that it can't shove the swab too far in your nose.
All the way to your brain.
A human could easily do that.
Gotcha. Well, especially the robot, doesn't decide whether it likes you or not. It just does it. Let's go and see if there are any other questions out there. Let's throw it over maybe to, I see that Kevin is with us. Kevin, just checking in with you. What are your thoughts there on these sorts of things? You ran a lot of branches for a long time. He may be struggling. He just moved into a new house. But I see Tom wants to talk, and Tom is the man. So go ahead, Tom.
Hey, John, how you doing? I came in a little late, and I apologize, but this has been very interesting. I have 2 questions that come to mind. One on the economics from the business case and the use, where we stand today and where you see this going. And the second was on the, I think you were calling it the form factor. So you've designed a robot to work with a tool or whatever it happens to be that was designed for a human, and you talked about NASA and what they did. So would it make sense to change the tool to more work within the environment of the robot? Or can you, in the case of the drill, for example, could you eliminate the battery and have that, so you lower the cost of that tool, and have the battery, the power for that come from the physical connection of the robot, and the robot is powering the tool.
Right. So in fact, you could put on attachments. These can be very modular. So if you specifically was drilling all the time or welding all the time, you would just perhaps give it that tool. So you could swap out the hand. So unlike a human, yes, you can do that. But one of the keys, of course, is that that's the same robot that you have with one hand can now operate every tool. And the entire world has been built for this strange species called humans. And so every doorway and every tool and everything is so that we can pick them up. So if you make a robot that can do that, you can now utilize the untold trillions of dollars that have been spent. Now, on the other hand, if you had some repetitive task, because mind you, I can have the human do it, but we're building an AI subconscious, which is basically a fancy way of saying that's a continuous learning system, so that eventually, either because you've just purposely done it many times over, or enough people have done it, it can do that task automatically. So for instance, with the UV robot, I do it once and go through a system, even if that included having a hand that was also a sprayer or opening a door and going through it. Whatever I had it do, it can now continue to do that by itself. Runs into trouble, you can jump in.
What about the economics of operating the robot? Where's the use case today, and how to use? Could a restaurant have a robot deliver my meal to my table? Is it
So certainly it could. So it depends. In fact, we've already had tests done with even the most simplified robot where there's a human operator in the kitchen and it puts it on a tray and then that robot takes it over. And in fact, we had a test done, a case study in Japan, where people who are paralyzed from the neck down for the first time since they had those injuries actually earned a wage and bought gifts for their family members by operating the robots just with their eye movements to move a robot from the kitchen to a table. And when they were there, if they needed dishes, they would just speak through it and ask the person to put the dishes on there and take it back. So that's at the lowest level, and then you can work your way up. So depending upon what attributes you want in the robot, the more expensive it is. For a UV robot, it's fairly inexpensive in terms of one employee. I mean, you could do a UV robot, say in the range of 50K or under, and except for replacing the bulbs, it's just going to plug in and charge every night. Maybe after 6 months or a year, or 3 years, your battery will go out. You'll buy a new one, slide it in. Now, if you want 2 arms and you want it to be super articulate and it can operate a drill and bake you a cake, then that's going to be a lot more expensive. But it also will depend upon scale. If you start, when you reach a point where you're producing these on the scale of, say, a Tesla electric car, which is much smaller than a gas car, then your price drops down to the $30,000 to $60,000 range, even for a very complex system.
And from your research, are you seeing that people want robots that look and act more like other people, or do they, like almost go all Westworld on us, where it's like you're not really sure in the end, or do they want robots that are clearly robots to separate the artificial from the natural?
People want to know it's a robot, but in our case, it's not actually just the robot, it's you. So we are working on a variety of ways in which it will carry your face and your vistage, either through a live video that then fills in for where you're wearing your headset, to a CGI version of your head that's broadcasted into either the chest unit or the head unit, so that it sees your expressions and your movements, and as well as your hands and doing what you're doing. So, and now you're seeing here part of the example that I mentioned, which is for more than a decade, Da Vinci has been doing robotic surgeries. Usually the person's in the room, though they have now done tests where they're not, where you get good haptic feedback, but you also get, you can move 10 inches and move instead 10 millimeters.
So Tom, good news. It doesn't have to actually be your face. So
or yours, John. Get the haircut, please. Get a shave.
Yeah. Oh man. Hey, I'm in.
Yeah, it turns out the most popular face is mine.
Yeah. No, great question.
One quick follow-up. 5G,
Sure.
what does 5G do for this environment?
So my entire life has been planned to take advantage of when this is the right time, because a lot of times on a project is it the right time? Literally, just for those who don't know, I'm fine now, but I was born with my legs backward. I was crippled and was beyond Forrest Gump, and was never supposed to get better. And during my childhood, therefore, one of the things I had a big passion for was science fiction. And in reading science fiction, there are examples of people who had alternative bodies. And so for me, I was already scientific minded. So I was like, well, what if you built robots and then you use that as your body? And the two things happened. One is I learned all the tech that was required for it. And that's what led me on a technological path and an education path to earn multiple science degrees and dive into technology. But the other one was a waiting game. I had to wait for robotics. I had to wait for sensors. I had to wait for AI. I had to wait for VR. And another big thing I had to wait for is both for inside fast bandwidth and for outside 5G.
So 5G does have a tremendous impact on it for sure. Going back to the economics, and Harry, do you have a few more minutes? I know we're going to be past the hour here, but
Yeah, I'm fine. Whatever you need, John.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So in the economics of this, how much do you think it costs a year, Tom, to have that crew come in? And I don't know, because you don't have enough branches, so you may not know. Maybe Gary or somebody or Andrew. Yeah. But I wonder how much it costs to have that crew come in and do that specialized cleaning. And interestingly enough, the UV robots are only doing that cleaning, but Harry's robots could also take the garbage out and clean the toilets and do all the other stuff that a normal janitor could do. So it seems like it's interesting, the value.
Well, also they won't steal anything. So if I'm in a bank, I may be concerned if I have people coming in at night that aren't monitored. So if they're not monitored, then you have a risk. Obviously the robot's not walking out with your money.
Well, interestingly enough, Harry, we just had a question from Paul Apopka out in First Financial, and he wants to know if they follow the 3 laws of robotics. So I said, we'd ask you. First of all, do you even know what the 3 laws are?
Yes, I do. But you could actually build that in. So for instance, if you wanted, it's up to you. And I'll give you examples of why in all circumstances you wouldn't want this rule. But to do no harm,
by the way, it was a joke. I know you know the 3 laws. You probably have.
So to do no harm is one, right? And you can program a robot so that the AI can look to see if you are trying to strike a human, use a gun or a knife or anything else, and shut it down within a second, so that it couldn't do the thing that you were trying to do with it. Second, of course, you can also geofence these. So for instance, someone can't take a robot and rob a bank. And third, there are circumstances where you do want to do harm. So for instance, if I'm a mom and I'm at work or somewhere and I have the robot there and it's monitoring the house and there's a break-in or an alert and I jump into the robot, I want to be able to defend my children. Now, in most circumstances, you could use a non-lethal method, which you and I, just so everyone knows, we have the creators of Taser are a partner of ours. And so the same robot that we discussed as UV and doing all the other things could be equipped with lethal or non-lethal methods to act as a security guard. And unlike some sort of security guards who when threatened decide to drop their gun, the robot will not.
Wow.
So Harry, if that's the case, then from the perspective of identity, so I don't want somebody in the robot that I don't know who they are, and this kind of leads back to and Tom, you've been a big advocate of this C Ledger and the work we've done there, and so one of the other things that I've been working very closely with Harry and some of the other experts that are out there is on sovereign identity and the identity piece, because you're going to need to be able to prove whoever it is in this robot, back to his point. And a big proponent of that has been for a long time. He actually has talked to Phil Winley and those guys very early on and has been part of that. So this also includes sort of the self-sovereign identity approach, which plays big into what we're talking about, think about the robot's ability to also determine every member that comes in the branch before they come in, or when they come in, using similar technology to do the proofs, the zero knowledge proofs and the validation, doing what Harry just said. He wants to be safe, but he doesn't want to give all his private information away. And that's an option. No, it's very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, we're very focused on making sure that it's supposed to be a doctor. Well, let's make sure it's a doctor. On the other hand, if I was showing up somewhere like I want to go to the museum, they don't need to know who I am.
Yeah, exactly. Great questions, Tom.
Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, man. Anybody else have any questions?
You can also do object recognition, by the way. So say you're in the bank and you don't want even the operator to be able to see certain bank account numbers or anything as it's moving by. You could program it so that the system would catch a string of characters and go, okay, that looks like an account number. I'm going to blank that out. In the same way that there's technology on your phone that you can take an Italian menu and turn it into an English one nearly instantly, you can do the same thing here.
That's a great point. You can blur out almost anything.
Or replace it.
Yeah. Great questions. Any other questions? Anybody else have anything else? I see a lot of people stuck around. I'm really appreciative of that. Harry, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, is interested, it says, hey, I'd be willing to work with you on a prototype or something. I want to clean my branches. I want to UV myself. Where's the best place to go?
Well, one, don't UV yourself. Two, actually, I'd recommend just going to you, John.
Okay.
In fact, maybe we should set up a, I think we already have it, but the more info button on our website, or just hand it out as an email.
Yep. But you're definitely heading in that direction. So I know you did your big raise and you're on to the next raise now. It just turns out this tech is a big deal, but the cleaning aspect of it I thought was important for the cranes to hear this, because I feel like it's moving very quickly in the environment, and I think at some point it'll become table stakes. And that's
yeah.
Go ahead.
And the cool thing is our system can be built upon. So you get it first for UV, and later on you decide, maybe it would be good to actually use it for my banking officer or a security person or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Harry, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. We also want to thank all of our folks, Member Pass, our sponsors, who, when this does get involved, Harry's already, spoke with the folks from Seal Ledger and Member Pass. That's certainly something we will be connecting along with this as this becomes available. And if you have more questions, if this interested you, I can tell you from firsthand that Harry could talk about this for literally eons, and would love to do it. So if you're interested and want to jump on, we're happy to have you. And this will be made available other than the video section of the robot. So those of you that got to join, you got to see something exclusive, and we appreciate that. Thanks,
John,
Harry.
John, I would add one thing, which is because you guys are credit unions, we are VC backed. So that means we have gone through an insane amount of due diligence. So if you need any information about that, John's happy to supply it.
Yeah, Harry really enjoys all of the regulations and things that go with that. It's
I love
his
it.
favorite thing. It's not even half of it. Thanks again, Harry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Harry.